little coffee on it. Highlighter.
Do I have a highlighter?
I need a highlighter. How's that?
Use a pen.
I might have to leave. What?
You can't leave. We won't have a
I
quorum.
won't have
No, that's what I'm saying.
You're stuck here.
All right, let me know when you're ready.
6 bells.
Yes.
You're not supposed to yell it across the room.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, she made it.
Hey, I saved your seat. Yeah. There you go.
We're Freddy's saying who's going to do the next.
All right.
All right, you ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We do have an established quorum. I would move to accept a motion for the approved minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Are there any discussions on the minutes that you read? No discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes approved. Let's see, there's no person on the agenda tonight. Let's move straight down to our public hearing and action that we have this evening. We have 4. Let's move straight to the first one. We have an action item discussion decision on a request by Dusty, and I apologize if I completely butchered this name, Wolstenholm, for a, did I get it? Oh, right, for a conditional use permit for a drive-up window. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a conditional use permit for a drive-up window up at the City View development. It's going to be associated with a financial institution. As you can see from the site plan, they're going to have 3 bays, and it looks like we have sufficient stacking, and it's sufficient enough that it will always remain on private drives unless things get really, really busy at the bank. However, with the design that they have and also with doing banking online with a bunch of different other things, I believe that it's satisfactory. One of the things that makes our code for drive-thrus very unique is we don't have a specific number. So we don't say you have to have X amount of, we don't say you have to have this amount of spaces. We put it on the applicant to justify whatever use they have, and you're going to be able to ask the applicant questions. As far as our comprehensive plan, this meets it. This is a commercial area. A drive-through is normally in these sorts of areas. We don't have any residential uses close by. I don't think the use will cause any significant harm. And with that, I yield the rest of my time to the applicant, and then we'll open ourselves up for questions. Then you can go ahead and begin the public hearing.
Perfect. Come on up. All right. So, tell us about what you're doing.
Well, so what we'd like to build is what we call a sort of our medium average sort of branch throughout Idaho. We have 43 branches similar to this, all the way from Rexburg, Idaho, making a big smiley face across the state, all the way up to Coeur d'Alene. This is kind of a gap for us. We have somewhere on the order of 60% of our branches are in the Treasure Valley, and our nearest branch between East Boise and Twin Falls would be this one. And so this would be a new location for us, a little added convenience. We've had sort of a surge in requests for our membership to have branch in this area over the last few years, which is interesting, and we like the idea, so we thought we'd put in a new branch here. Idaho Central Credit Union is, we're not a bank, we're a credit union. There's a little bit of a difference there. We like to think a lot of a difference. A bank is owned generally by a group of investors as a corporation. and the investors hire a paid board of directors to maximize profitability. With the credit union, we have a volunteer board of directors, and the investors are the members of the credit union. And the stated goal of the board of directors, these volunteers, is to maximize the return to the membership. We do very well. We're consistently rated by our industry experts as the #1 best return to the membership in the Northwest. So we're a great partner for our communities. You'll hardly find a high school or college sports court in Idaho that doesn't have our logo on it. We're good partners that way. We're good in our communities. And we think we'll be a good spot for this as well. Our intention is to have, we won't have a window, but we will have a through-the-wall ATM. And then we'll have 2 lanes with a 15-inch video screen where you can talk directly. We find that's a little more personal than a shadow behind a big piece of glass 3 lanes away. I think we'll be a great addition to this little spot. So, any questions for me?
Commissioner?
Are there any internal operations, inside operations, or is it strictly a drive-up window, or do you have offices and internal?
Yeah, we've built space for 6 teller stations, 4 loan officers. We'll have a manager office and then a private office available for if we need a mortgage specialist or a business lending specialist here on site. Yep.
Okay.
So full function branch.
I actually have an account with ICCU, so I'm happy to see you here.
Thank you.
Where exactly are you going to be? I know I look at the picture here, and then I look at this picture here. Is it like right up against Dutch Bros?
It is just north of Dutch Brothers. There's a slim piece of land that will be, it's currently scheduled to be a Taco Bell. And then north of that, there will be a 1.4 acre lot between that Taco Bell and the auto mall, and we'll be right there.
Okay, so all in a general area. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you took that big chunk of dirt between Dutch Brothers and Auto Ranch, about the northern 2/3 of that would be us.
Anybody else? No? All right, thank you. I'll have a seat, and I'll open it up for the public hearing. Just so everybody's aware, if anybody does want to come up, we do ask that you state your name and address for the record. And we can't answer questions until everybody is fully through. So with that, I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody in the audience who would like to come up and speak to this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And we will go, Commission, do you have any other questions for Brock? Any other questions at all? Okay. Hearing none, I'm welcome to a motion. Just do it, Nancy.
You're a motion maker up there.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the commission recommends to the city council approval of the request for the CUP, subject to site plan amendments as required by building, public works, fire, and zoning officials to comply with applicable city codes and standards.
Second.
Second.
Second by James. Going around the table. James?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Edie?
Aye.
Aye as well. And that motion passes. Okay, moving down to the next action item discussion is a request by Gerald Maxfield for preliminary plat for 8th Street Station subdivision consisting of 44 buildable townhome lots and 8 common lots located at 650 West 8th South Street. Mr. Cherry.
Mr. Chair, this is the old movie theater property. We are all very familiar with this property. They had a planned unit development, which was recommended for approval by this body, and then it was also permitted by City Council. PUDs are a lot of work up front. However, on the tail end, as far as staff and doing our review, it's a little bit easy because we just have to make sure that all of the permits afterwards just meet that basic PUD. So what community development staff did along with public works is we reviewed the planned unit development documents, which consisted of 44 townhomes, a lot of shared space. We reviewed that to the preliminary plat, which was submitted. and we found that they do match, and it meets the zoning there, which is 8th Street Townhomes R4 PUD. The next step for them, if the preliminary plat passes, is to do a final plat. At the time of final plat, that's where we get to be even more of a stickler about certain things, about their utility lines, water, fiber, about certain documents that we need. If you remember with this one, we have a emergency easement that we're going to need from their neighboring property, and they will have to have that recorded prior to submitting their final plat. So it's after the final plat, once that's done, that's when we do the building permits and everything else. The final plat review is very technical. It's mostly staff looking at it, it's our engineers looking at it, making sure everything fits the preliminary plat, and in this case, preliminary plat, PUD, and so forth. But other than that, my comments and my recommendation is largely the same, same that it was on July 6th. It's an infill project. It's a great project when we look at taxable value per acre. The city's going to not only be able to maintain it, the city's not only going to be able to maintain this project, but this project is actually going to subsidize other lower density projects as well. So we're going to get our bang for our buck. It's a housing product that Mountain Home has never seen when it comes for a for purchase product. It's going to help us with our affordable housing problems that we have right now. It's entry level, it's good for young families, it's good for older people, it's good for people that live on the base, for investors that want to buy it and also potentially rent it out. It definitely offers various options. And with that, I don't have any other commentary. I'll yield my time to the applicant and let them go forward if that is fine with you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Brandon McDougall, I'm with Kimley Horn. Address is 950 Bannock Street in Boise. Brock did a fantastic job summarizing. He pretty much said a lot of things that I was going to say, so I'm not going to necessarily repeat any of that. Just to confirm, there's 44 buildable lots and 8 common lots with this project. We've got everything set up to move forward with the emergency access, the easement associated with that, with the adjoining property. Just waiting to make sure that we've got approval on the project before we take it to that next step. Same with the, there's a variety of things like we'll start working on the construction documents and the final plat if we get approval tonight. So that will go back before this group here, hopefully within a month or so. Other than that, I believe that Brock has covered everything, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have on the project. Excited to be here and excited to bring this product to the area. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Mason, do you have any questions right off the bat?
I have one. I know back in July when we initially discussed this, the cost per unit was like 300-ish, 300,000, and wood prices through the roof. Do you think that's still going to be about the same price range?
Do we have a good sense for that at this point?
That is still the target. We might be slightly above that, but that's our target.
Perfect. All right, I'll have you have a seat and go ahead and open up the public hearing. Anybody in the audience would like to speak to this? Seeing none, the public hearing then closes. Commission, any other questions that you'd like to ask? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we recommend approval to City Council as presented as subject for preliminary plat for the 8th Street Station project, subject to the site plan amendments as required by building, public works, fire, zoning officials to comply with all applicable codes and standards, and that the final plat and all future development will comply with the uses and bulk and coverage controls as provided in attachment number 4 of this document. And before the final plat being recorded, the applicant shall receive all necessary approvals from Central Health Department regarding water and sewer, also the easement right-of-way easement for the emergency traffic, and per City Code 916, failure to file and obtain certificate of the acceptance of final plat application by the administrator within 1 year after action by the commission shall cause all approvals of said preliminary plat to be null and void unless a 1-year extension of time is applied for 30 days before the expiration of the subdivider and granted by the commission. A preliminary plat may be extended one time only, and after that which it shall be deemed null and void.
All right, I got a first, I have a second. Second by Billy. Going around the table, James.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
Dee Dee.
Aye.
I have myself, and that motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next item on the list is a request by Carrie Stockwell for conditional use permit to operate an event center to be located at 170 North Main Street. Mr. Cherry.
All right. This property is concerning, just as you mentioned, 170 North Main Street. It's one of our spaces downtown, which has been really remodeled. There was some fire damage, and it housed a couple different businesses, and it's been in flux, so we're very excited to see a new business coming downtown after all of the work that we put there. What is being proposed is a event center. So one of the reasons that we have conditional use permits is there are specific uses, such as a event center, that have potential to have certain adverse impacts that we need to look at a case-by-case basis, which is the reason that they are here. Certain impacts that we would look at is traffic. Does it meet the general culture of all of the surrounding uses? Do we have adequate parking? Can we adequate service this use? Those are all the different things that we will be looking at. For the event center, we don't have specific design standards, so we don't necessarily call out that the event center has to have X. But what we can fall back on are the general conditional use permit criteria, which is all before you within my staff report. And it really just goes, is it harmonious? Is there anything hazardous? Will this significantly disturb someone's own quiet enjoyment of their property? So that's one of the reasons that we're here. It's one of the reasons that we have a public hearing for this, so that surrounding property owners can come to this meeting, that they can say these are our different concerns that we have. And it's also an opportunity for them to meet with the applicant as well, to learn more about their business. With that, if this is passed by this body, it will go to the city council, and then they will be able to operate as a event center, which is different than their current use, which is a music school and whatever the thing is of that day. The good news is that our downtown C2 commercial designation, it's a very diverse one. It's built for these types of uses. It's built for people to be there. It's supposed to be lively, and I believe that this use is appropriate for our downtown. And I will let this body decide if the applicant has taken the necessary measures to ensure that they will be a awesome component to our downtown space. And with that, I yield my time over to the applicant.
Okay. Come on up.
Carrie Stockwell, this is Mick Stockwell, my husband. Hi. Yes, with Tuned In Event Achievement and Event Center, we have two sides of the business. The achievement side is, as he mentioned, is their teaching side. That's what happens during the day. We have students that come in for music lessons, which right now we're up to about 55 students. So they come in they all come in for individual students for that, but it's during the daytime. During the evening hours is when we'd like to offer the event center, because it's a large, beautiful space that is gorgeous, and we'd like to offer that for the city, for the community to come in and have their wedding venues, their quinceañera venues, to have their birthday parties, to have their anniversaries, a place meetings where they can have lots of people and come in there and enjoy this space and have a good space. Our space is open and we like it. Can't think of anything else that you'd like. Just ask me any questions.
We currently have about 30 tables and about 240 chairs. We're waiting on the inspection and such to continue on.
To see how many we're allowed.
To see how many we're allowed, but for right now, we're just going to keep it at 240, I think. Or if less, depending on what the fire marshal
Whatever the fire marshal says, yes.
dictates
Whatever
to
he
us.
says.
So everything else, he's already come through and done a preliminary check, and he was pretty
He was pretty
positive.
good, yeah.
So
Excellent. Commission, any questions right off the bat?
My only question is, what is your basic thoughts as far as parking and that type of thing for large?
For large
your
venues.
yeah.
We have, besides just the front right there, okay, for the venue, for the people who have their parties, there are 5 spaces in the back.
Okay.
Which are theirs for them to use, so for the people who
loading, unloading.
who are
and things
loading
like
and
that.
unloading, they can have that up back there. We also have Railroad Park in back there, and then we also have the parking area next to
El Rancho
El
parking.
Rancho parking, that's its name, yeah. That would have it. So there's venues, there's parking within there, and also if it gets really crowded, if they wanted, they can use the old Paul's parking lot. It's a little bit more of a walk, but you can use that parking lot as well.
The time frame of the events would not impact the daytime businesses. Okay, so
During
you're
the
talking
evenings.
about usually evening times and things of that nature.
Right.
Hopefully it draws enough other customers in that if they wanted to go ahead and go to other restaurants or things of that nature, they could still do that, downtown. So it's not just us. We do open it up to where anybody could rent from us and bring in a caterer or something of that nature for events. And we've got a contract for the folks to sign and things of that nature, and they need to meet our needs too, and the needs of the local businesses. One of the things that we dictate within the contract is that your parties will not influence any other merchants on the street or any other
Right.
businesses, if you
They
will.
stay inside the business, they're not outside.
So,
Nancy?
Dee Dee, did you have something?
She answered it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it has to
Are
stay
you,
inside.
I'm just curious, are you going to have any kind of a performance type venues? I mean, you teach music or anything, like a stage where there can be,
Right now, we don't have we would like to have a stage in the future. That's a lot of money that we don't have.
probably a year down the road.
A year
maybe.
down the road. Then we'll apply for those type of permits for that. But right now, the only performance we have is just chairs, and then our piano sits up in front
Right.
for our recitals. But otherwise, no, there's no stage, not for a good year.
okay.
We've had one recital since we've been in the place. It was a small group, probably about
70
30
people.
Yeah.
It was small.
So it wasn't. It seemed everybody was spread out. No issues, no problems at all. But as far as anything larger down the road, then a lot of that is
Well, sure.
having to come up with a stage, because we're not going to get into the architecture design or anything of that nature. I think if we do eventually get a stage,
We want something mobile.
we want something that's mobile that we could pack away and move and dictate, where we want to have that on the floor and how we want to have it, depending on who wants to either
Pay
rent
for
it,
stage.
set it up, whatever. I think the best thing would be a manufactured type. That way we're not getting into any type of
Building or-
architectural
yeah,
design
correct.
issues or anything like that. We want something pre-made. And we've even talked to the fire marshal about that as far as requirements, what would be needed for that, and that we're talking about 2 sets of stairs, an extra fire extinguisher for the stage, if you've got lighting and other things like that, electronics. So we've gone into that, and I think they've been very helpful. So,
But that's at least a year down.
yeah, it's quite a ways down the road before we decide we're gonna go continue that way. We need,
Well, then you're
get
looking
regular
not only
events
just a
going.
platform, you're looking lighting and sound and all that
Correct,
stuff.
Yeah.
yes, that's right. And so-
Are there currently businesses on either side of you right now?
Level Biting Church on one
on
side.
one side. And don't ask me the name of the Hispanic place.
What was it?
It's
The market.
the market.
Okay.
I don't
I
know.
don't
They
try
get
it.
a lot of business. They get a lot of business.
Really?
Unless I missed it, how big, what's square footage on this? I'm just trying to picture in my mind since we don't have interior pictures.
It's 1,000.
No,
It's big.
I didn't even, yeah.
It's big. It's huge.
I want to
Good.
say 60 by 40 at least
Okay.
on there. I don't know the square footage right off the
Off the
bat.
top of my
but-
head, no, I don't have that right off the top of my head.
But the floor space, I'm
There's
just,
lots.
we finished the floor in there. I mean, there was
'Cause
only
it was
half the
just
floor
cement
done.
floor, so we finished it.
So we finished that out, and I remember measuring out 60 in length, 60 to 65, and then probably about 40, 45 in the
To
other
finish what
direction.
was left.
Yeah, I'm looking at a good 2,400 square feet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So 240 would be probably your max? Well, what do you think it could go?
I was
We're
at the
thinking-
very most say 350,
350, yeah, that's
but
good.
again, that's a safety concern.
That's up to the fire.
We were looking at having 4-foot exits all the way around, so we have 3 exits. And then we'll have lighted signs in there, or reflective signs.
Similar to the Elks ballroom, something to that size.
Yeah, the Elks is the only thing
Slightly-
that's comparable. The Elks
Slightly
is,
smaller.
Okay.
Yeah, we're smaller than the Elks because the Elks basically has 3
Yeah,
squares
yeah.
like that. We're smaller than that.
We had our daughter's wedding over there, so I got
Yeah,
an
we,
idea.
we know the Elks.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's 2 entrances off Main, correct?
And then there's one in the alley.
Okay, and is there a wall? I can't even remember. I remember being in the
It's
first
all
one. Is
open.
the wall between the 2, or is the whole thing open?
No, the whole thing is open.
Okay.
There is rooms in the back. There's, okay, so you have the large space here. You have rooms right here. That's where we teach out of the rooms right here.
Okay.
You have that entrance that's going right here, and then right here is the set of double doors to the back 5.
Okay.
There. Okay, and then over here is the restroom and the utility room.
Okay.
So they're right here. But yeah, the school part is actually small compared to
Yeah.
this.
okay. In that case, I'll go ahead and have you sit down, and I'll open up public hearing. Anybody in the audience care to speak to it, please come forward. Just need your name and your address, please.
Marla Kessel, 1510 East 5th North, and we own Mountain Home Printing right across the alley from where these guys are. And I only had a couple of concerns about that, is the parking, to make sure nobody's parking behind our building during that time, because we have to be in there in the evening sometimes, which we haven't had any problem with you guys at all. So, yeah, just want to make sure we don't get your customers or whatever parking back there. And garbage, as long as there isn't any garbage down the alley, because I picked up garbage for other businesses and that, and I like to keep it clean back there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Marla, sign in.
Oh, yeah. Marla, can you sign it for me, please? Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Can I add to that?
1 second. We'll close the public hearing here, and now you get to go ahead and add to that.
The other thing I would ask is to get her information. If she had a complaint, she can call us directly, and we take care of it.
Perfect. Yep, I'm all in favor of you guys figuring all of that out right there. That's,
One of those big bins for the garbage, so.
yep. Yeah, definitely. Okay, Commission, any other, yes, sir?
About 2,800 square feet, somewhere there.
Oh, is it, okay. Wow, another 400 square foot than I had on. Oh, nice. Perfect. Commission, any other questions, comments, concerns?
Mr. Chair, the only comments that I would make to this body, and it's not a recommendation necessarily, but it's just so you know all of the tools that you have that are available. You know, if parking really was a concern, if the event's like, man, that's a lot of people, what does that look like? You could have certain conditions that if they were to do a event that was more than X amount of people, that it had that they're only able to have it after just after business hours, after 5 p.m. or maybe even after 6 p.m. if any of you do have reservations about that. And what you can even do too, to be really nice, is you can say we're going to have that condition for a year, see how it works. If there's no complaints, then they can come back in and then operate just whenever they want as well. Once, but I'm not making that as a formal recommendation. It's just if any of you do still have concerns, that there are ways that we can work with the applicant to ensure that they're doing their part, and that they are going to do what they say they are going to do. It's just we got to make sure with any condition that we have that we are able to enforce it, and that's kind of and that can be difficult. As much as I love music, I don't know if the city would be open to me just sitting right outside their business, making sure they aren't having any secret parties without me. But just know that those are conditions that you may place, just however you see fit.
So, just a quick question. If they decided to have one that's like 100 people, would they need to, and we put that in place, would they need to contact the city or would they just do it and get
it would
paid?
be. I would hope that they don't contact the city because then it makes the enforcement and everything even that much more difficult. We're using a lot of city resources to police them.
Right.
The best thing that we could do is, hey, if you're going to have a event with more than X amount of people, you can only do it within these hours. Because then if we receive any sort of complaint, I can look back on that and then I can police them and be like, you guys weren't supposed to do that. And then I can tattletale to you guys. And then a conditional use permit can be revoked. Too. So let's say that it was repetitious and their parties are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We can start that process. I did it once when I was in Twin Falls. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world to do. But there are ways to ultimately make sure that they are complying. Given their business background and what they do, I'm not nervous about any real ragers happening and things getting out of hand necessarily. But if we wanted to add just an added protection to protect the business owners that are there so that they feel a little bit better about what's coming next to them, just because we haven't had that intensive a use there necessarily where we have 200 or 300 people downtown, you could say that we condition you for events of 150, 200 plus, that those happen outside of normal business hours, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m.
Yep.
Rich, put you on the spot. Approximately how many parking spaces are in El Heredero? Do you know?
Can you ask me that? I'm trying to figure out where that was. I'd have to look at that. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
How about the ones that are going to be in Railroad
We
Park?
do plan on, that is something we do plan on paving Railroad Park and working with some more parking spots because we did move the fence to be able to add more parking into that. So,
Right.
And it would be substantial.
And then
if
just
you look at, just if we were to look at our comprehensive plan and our downtown plan overall, there was
We have
adequate
plenty,
parking
yeah.
for anything we were going to do.
And then you had mentioned that Paul's parking lot. Is that something that you've asked them about or asked the owners or just assuming you could do that?
No, if we ever get something that huge.
Right.
I don't, if they're, people are gonna use it whether I say yes or no. Because they do it.
Yeah.
We'd have to contact them.
We would contact whoever was bought it.
El Rancho parking is more what we were talking about.
Right, yeah, and I think there,
So is
yeah.
Railroad Park.
In my mind, I think there's plenty.
There's plenty.
And
I would agree.
I will, if I could add to this, the majority of our events are going to be Friday through Sunday.
Right.
In the evenings, we're busy teaching. So we don't want to impede upon that time, those lessons for individual teaching. Okay, and the events will be on weekends, probably after normal duty hours or business hours.
Yeah.
And then, Commissioner, there are, we do have time limits on a lot of the parking that's in front of the businesses also. So.
That's true. Yeah, don't-
Commission, anything else? Okay. Hearing none, I'll move for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we recommend to the Mountain Home City Council to approve this conditional use permit to the city, to the conditional use permit, subject to site plan amendments as required by building, public works, fire, and zoning officials to comply with applicable city codes and standards.
Okay, I have Nancy's first. Do I have a second? Second by Billy. Billy, we'll start with you this time.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
Billy. James.
Aye.
Passes. Excellent. Look forward to seeing some good stuff. All right. And on to our last one, ladies and gentlemen. We have an action item discussion decision for a request for a zoning title amendment to amend Title 9, Chapter 16, Section 11, Final Plat D, submittal of final plat. E, administrative review. F, approval of subdivision plat. And G, approval period. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a housekeeping item. We all know that our zoning ordinance isn't perfect. That we are going to have more Band-Aids after this that we need to do in order for it to best meet the needs of our citizens and the operations of our city. With the final plat process, so remember, when it comes to the development timeline, we first start out, if it's not within the city, we annex it. Before anyone can really develop on it, unless it's an outright permitted use, they're going to do a conditional use permit, they'll do a planned unit development, maybe they're rezoning it, and then they do a preliminary plat, which is any time that we divide any sort of property into lots. We've seen a lot of those lately, a lot of platting, and they can come in different configurations. They can be traditional plats or something like the 8th Street townhomes, where they have 0 lot lines, but it's dividing property for future ownership. So the preliminary plat is the biggest risk that a developer probably takes, because it's not for certain if they will get the plat. We ask from them a bunch of different documents, but some of the things that we don't ask for them to do is, well, you don't have to get in a engineer to say this is where specifically this line is going to be, this is where all your infrastructure has to be. We aren't going to have you start putting in sidewalks right now. We're not going to have you widen things right now. The final plat is where we do all of the very fine tuning to ensure it meets what was approved with the preliminary plat. Now, the Local Land Use Planning Act, which is the piece of legislation that the state gives to the city, saying this is what you are able to do when it comes to land use enforcement. A final plat is not mandated to go before a planning and zoning body. Normally they do with smaller municipalities, just because there isn't a lot of capacity. However, being that it's a more technical review, it's a review that I'm very heavily involved with, but more so, and I put it in here, Public Works as well. One of my biggest fears that I have with the growth that we're happening, with everything that's happening, is, are we going to miss something? Is someone not going to know? Is someone not going to be clued in? The changes that I'm proposing is going to make sure, per code, that the Public Works Director, who acts as our city engineer in most cases, is notified and that they're part of that review. It's one of the safest things that we would be able to do. It would also be more clear as to when the plat is to be not only approved, but recorded. That's very important language to have in there to make sure they meet that year timeline. And one of the reasons that we give people a certain timeline to get things approved is we understand that things change. We don't want a developer to come in here and then just sit on the land for 10 years, because the environment can totally change around them and it needs to go back. So this helps to ensure all of those timelines. And also, per our comprehensive plan, it speaks to where can we expedite our processes and better streamline them without losing the integrity of our reviews. Once again, for the final plat to go before this body, a lot of other municipalities don't have their planning and zoning commission do that, being that it's largely technical. And let's say, and I wrote it in there, that someone brings in a final plat, but there is a material change, and that means that they added more density, there's less parking, there's something that is materially different from the preliminary plat. That's when I say, no, you're going to have to go back through P&Z with this final plat. I'm going to have the commission go ahead and review this, because I feel as the administrator that you have deviated substantially. And if they think, no, we didn't, you're wrong, they can appeal my decision, but it's still going to take the same amount of time because they're going to have to go to you guys. So it's a way that I believe we can expedite our processes. This body is amazing. I don't think it's necessarily something we need to have as far as a review of the final plat. If you approve the preliminary plat, we really give those preliminary rights to developers, and any final plat that they come in with is going to have to once more line up with that preliminary plat. So that's what I have for you. The city is the applicant on this one, so you can ask me questions, and also Rich right now, or feel free to open it up for the public hearing, and then we can continue to discuss this item.
Okay, I think I will open up the public hearing if anybody wants to address. No? Okay, public hearing is then closed. Commission, anybody?
Oh, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think it's a good move, especially since, I mean, we don't know what we're looking at. I mean, as far as all that nitty-gritty stuff and the final.
Brock, are we losing the checks and balances on this?
There is.
That's
I think you can definitely see it as a check and balance.
That's where I'm reserved at, because, for instance, say the mayor and council is in step, and it's, we're the body of the people in a sense, and it's once it's approved, it's out of our hands in the sense that we don't get to look at it again, even though it's technical. But it just seemed like, are we missing that check and balances? I know that's not benchmarked throughout all the counties, but what are the benefits of
Having an extra set of eyes on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I understand the streamline process. I do. I get that. I do feel as though I'm kind of in the same boat with the ability. I think that you're removing, you're removing a body to have just one extra look on it, which I understand it's technical. But still, I think another question I would have is, on that final plat, is there still opportunity for discussion from the community?
So with the final plat, everything really happens. So the way I describe to it, your biggest bite at the apple is with the preliminary plat. The final plat, yes, there is discussion with the community, but it's for those finer points. And the example I'll use is the 8th Street townhomes. Let's say that they submit all their final plat documents, everything looks great, but we said, hey, you have to have that emergency access, and I don't have those documents. And they're like, oh, we will get it. And I'm like, no, we need those. It's integral to the design for emergency services. I would then say, no, I'm not going to take it before the city council, there was a material change, and you go back to P&Z. And they can be like, no, I don't need a material change, but they have to go back to P&Z anyway, and then we go back. That's when the general public can speak about things pertaining to that one component. But let's speak about Thunderbolt Landing. Thunderbolt Landing had a preliminary plat that was approved. They cannot do anything more than what was proposed with that preliminary plat. So can they decide, well, we're going to do duplexes now. We're not going to do single family homes, but we're going to do duplexes, and that's going to increase our density. That can't happen. Obviously, like you mentioned, it gives another set of eyes on it. If anything, it could slow down the process, whether that is good or bad, for this body to look at it and understand, like, all right, they met everything they said they were going to do with the preliminary plat. We give a positive recommendation to city council. That's something we can do. It is an added protection, but I can tell you from where I'm sitting, and I can't necessarily say I'm going to be the one always sitting here. So it can add a protection to making sure that staff is doing what they're going to do. But in order for that protection to have its full effect, and I know you guys look at your stuff because you ask the best questions, but make sure that if we want to provide a checks and balance, that you are doing the comparisons, that you're looking at all of the attachments I'm giving you to make sure everything is there, and it's not just, well, I'm going to let Brock talk without looking at my stuff, and I'm just going to go with it, because then the checks and balance really isn't there. So it really depends on the efforts by this body.
I have one question. Was it Thunderbolt Landing? So Thunderbolt Landing, correct me wrong, it was like 238 houses. Then it got slimmed down to
173.
I don't remember ever seeing a final plat for that.
Because it didn't demonstrate.
No, it hasn't happened. It hasn't
They
come
haven't
through.
submitted one at all.
So before they do a final plat, they have to like build all their infrastructure. They have to put a bunch of stuff in.
So you passed the preliminary, and then the council changed the preliminary to make it smaller.
Yeah.
And I guess that's
See,
where,
but no, I don't. We didn't pass it. I remember that was denied, and
Yeah.
she specifically said you either deny me or pass me.
And we
And we
denied it.
denied her, and she went to the council.
We recommended that it be
recommended
denied.
denial.
hmm So we recommended denial,
Yes.
and
That's
then
right, I got it. Yeah,
it
you
went.
didn't- You didn't pass, excuse
Yeah.
me. The preliminary plat was here, you had a chance to look at it, you said no. It went to the council, and then the council
said
looked at
yes.
it also and said,
No to
didn't
that
bite on the first
configuration.
time, went back, tabled it again, changed the preliminary plat, they were happy with it that way, so that's where that.
So I guess so why didn't the preliminary plat? Words are hard.
Yep, you're fine.
Come back to us with the changes, even though we denied it, even suggesting the changes, or at least having those conversations. Why didn't that come back to us?
I think.
Because the
Because
council's the
You're
final.
ordinance guy, I'll let you go.
No, you're fine. Just because what was proposed was less density. It was not as impactful. Let's say that city council, like let's say it would have went the other way, and we live in some bizarro world, and they're like, well, we don't want 288, we want 300, we want an even number. Then it would have to go back to you. That it's a material change.
So it's a
more
material
than that.
change to increase, it would come back,
To
but to decrease,
increase.
it doesn't come back. Is that what
Not
I'm hearing?
necessarily per our legal counsel. If this body wants like the official, this is how it works, I would have to have our legal counsel write up the brief for you. But that's what we were directed to by our legal counsel.
and Brock, the one thing with the checks and balances, to speak to what you said, while the mayor and council may have one, say one lane they're going in, the check and balances, you got 6 people in here that's going to have different viewpoints that may catch something that, even though it's technical and I don't have an engineering degree, but and so forth, that someone may see that may get slipped by.
I need some clarification as far as what our job is. Because I was come down to say, what's the definition of this
Right.
commission? And if I'm hearing you right, I'm hearing you saying that in a sense, the council has to come back to us or let us know so that we can look at it and say, this is okay, council, you can do that. I mean, that
Yeah.
might not be what you're talking about.
Well, no.
But I can't,
Yes, it is, because this way, if it changes significantly, say that Thunderbolt went down to say 150 houses, does the public have any input on that, even though it's a change for the better? Is there any public input into it? Or
well, they can go to the council meeting, but you were talking about us.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, that to me, that could get incredibly complicated or incredibly bogged down in bureaucratic. I might be wrong if I misunderstand what you're saying, Billy, but
Right.
I'm always concerned with what our, the definition
yeah.
of what we are
Right.
supposed to do. And the concern, and I'm also hearing that you're saying the concern is another set of eyes or more eyes on it to look.
But why not?
Is there any other, is there any other entity that you can include? Because right now, am I right in saying it's your office and then Public Works? Okay, so is there a third that's not us necessarily?
It is us, that's the thing, it's us. It's right there. Until it's all crossed out.
And
So we are the third entity.
And I agree with you. I don't want to hold up a rock or
But
say,
I know, but what I'm saying is they want to take it out, but if the concern is it doesn't have to go back to us, is there another that's in the city, that's a third
In the
entity?
city, so as a third entity, as a third party reviewer.
Just,
so,
just to,
So, but they're not a decision maker. So as far as decision makers and recommending bodies,
Come back to us.
that's you and city council. As far as technical reviews and technical recommendations, that's the community development department. That's Richard Keedy. Also, we have a third-party contractor for all of our engineering work, which does that as well. one thing I will say, and I'm writing down all these comments because I got to write the findings of fact. And I'm not saying that the points are bad about checks and balances, about being thorough, taking our time. It can be certainly a good thing. But as far as ensuring that the public is able to participate in that discussion, if we were going to use Thunderbolt as the example, I think the public had a chance to certainly speak
Well, and
to
they
it.
did, and they did, and they spoke to it, and that's why we listened, and then ultimately we denied it, but then they went to council, and then if council didn't give them that opportunity, it would have just been on the agenda without any opportunity for public discussion again. That's my problem, is the moment you go straight to that council, unless council goes, let's open this up for public discussion, public's out again.
Yep.
So now it's literally up to the body of the council to make that choice and decision instead of hearing from the community. That's where I kind of get the hiccup, because yes, our job is to follow the ordinances and the codes and also the comprehensive plan, and I get that. And if there's changes or any kind of final plat, that gives that final opportunity for the public.
Well, and this is the question, but even at the council meeting, the public can speak to it, correct?
So the public is able to speak for
That 3 minutes.
for their 3 minutes, but being able to be granted specific time to speak about a specific item can be at the discretion of the presiding officer.
And the person that does the agenda is the person that sits in this seat.
So my question is.
So you don't trust that person?
When it's not. So my question is, why now? We've been doing this and I'm new to this board, so we've been doing this as business as usual for the last, I'm just gonna say 20 years. Is it, the thing is the check and balances, well, we know that you're thorough through that, but say that if you get a job offer and there was someone else that's my thing, is not as competent that I have faith in, we pretty much gave him the check and balances away. And I mean, why is it because we have more construction, or is it more busy? What is it, why to change it?
Yeah, that was my hiccup too. You kind of stated it really well, that you may not be there, for a while. So the next person that fills your seat, we're literally giving them that power, and that's hard, especially when that individual may not know as much, or might need to have those extra set of eyes. So for me, that's difficult.
Yeah. The why now of just why this was presented was because it was a housekeeping item in other municipalities that I've been in. It is more commonplace to not have this body review that, and I saw that as a way. Well, that's one way that we could maybe look at seeing if it works for us. However, when we bring forth zoning title amendments, it has to go through this body, and it either does work for us or it doesn't work for us.
Can I ask you this question? From going from here to there, have there been any negative impacts by this board having that right in the past that you can recall?
In the past, we haven't done a final plat here yet. So, as far as timelines, anything like that,
I guess if there was like a data thing, okay, we holding up like the bureaucracy process, and we holding a builder up months and months and months, cost of da-da-da, I could see that, but if there's no empirical data saying that by doing this, if we're holding it up, I don't see the harm in it to keep us an extra set of eyes, regardless who's in that seat. Because it's just another sanity check to have 6 people to look at something like, oh, why is that? Because everyone looks at these documents totally different, with a different view, which that's what this council is good for. Just to look at it with different experiences, different backgrounds, and different thought processes.
Brock, if let's just say we go with this, Thunderbolt Landing comes back, that's going to go straight to council. But right now, Thunderbolt Landing comes back, it's going to come to us.
we'll come to this body for your review. That's what the code says. And you would compare the final plat to the preliminary plat that was approved.
I think that's our job, personally. I really
But do we make would there be a motion though? Or do we just review it? Or we just looks
You
like
would
the
have
same.
to approve the final
Well,
plat.
Or
in
recommend
city
it.
code, it doesn't necessarily
Well, it's all
say-
recommending, it's,
It says review. It doesn't even necessarily say a decision. It says that it needs to be reviewed by city council. I mean, not by city council, pardon. The planning and zoning commission. But it doesn't even necessarily say that you need to take an action, but you need to be part of that process. To be better safe than sorry, I would say yes, that this body should have a recommendation. As to saying that we reviewed it or something, that they send to city council saying that it's been reviewed and any commentary that you may have. But note that the comments and conditions that you're able to make, being that the preliminary plat was approved, can only kind of be in that.
But in this case, the
That's-
preliminary plat was denied, and that's what irritates me. And it's not really a matter of trust. We have a situation where you have regulation and administration, and when the administrator becomes the regulator or the reviewer of the regulations, now you've got a problem, because now the fox is in the hen house, and I think that's a lot of problems with a lot of things we have nowadays. We're giving up all of our checks and balances and saying, well, we'll just let the administrators take care of it. Well, did the city council hear in any way, for example, the number of people that were in here that objected to that particular process? And if not, then you're right. There's no public hearing coming back for those people to take in. If they don't follow the city council's all of the meetings, and I don't think that the public necessarily, yes, they're a better informed public if they pay attention, but in fact, should they have to, if there's a public hearing process, they go to the public hearing process and then they see it tossed out. They don't even see what comes back for the approval if they're not paying attention to city council stuff. So, and that may be true with us as an advisory. I think we are in an advisory capacity. But to be honest with you, I take offense at it when the city council doesn't at least come back and say, we've negotiated these things with these people, and we believe now we have a plan that does fit with what we want. I think that's not just a good checks and balance, that's a common courtesy. And that's one of those things that has created problems, in my understanding, in the county quite a little bit, where the county has a planning and zoning group. And there have been circumstances where they have been at odds, and basically the county commissioners have just said, no, we're going to do what we want to do. So from that standpoint, I don't know that it's a matter of necessarily trusting. It's just a matter of the process. And if you give up the process, then where do you stop? I mean, that's my opinion.
Commission just kind of, and I just kind of looking at the ordinance, and when you look at F, it's on your thing.
Could you speak up just a little bit, Rick?
If you have F, if you look at F.
Yes.
So, F does say, I'm just looking at what it says here, it says, no plat shall be recorded or offered for recording within the county until the plat has been reviewed by the commission and approved by the mayor and the council. So, I guess right now, really, it looks like it's just, it looks like it's just review for the commission, and then the council approves it. So that's the way it looks like with the final plat that it is, right, looking at that. But, you've reviewed it and gone with that one. I'd have to look to see what the other one says, if it kind of says the same thing with the preliminary plat. But that's where, again, the preliminary plat is where really the meat and the potatoes are, so, but.
But during the review, you can make recommendations to the city council.
well, what does that mean, review? I mean, what is the process when you say
That's where our code
review?
is, and
Yep.
as I mentioned before, it's empty. Does it necessarily mean that we do it in a public meeting? I don't know.
Well, even just to say, what do we do about it? Do you know what I mean? It's semantics comes into everything, and that's where you have to, so when you say we review it, so what's that process? Does that mean we vote again? Does that mean we, as far as recommendation, denying, approving to the,
So I think the difference, and I'm going to go, sorry. Nancy,
No,
I
no,
didn't
you're
mean
fine.
to interrupt you, but if you look at, it's not on this one, but it's before, if you look at the preliminary plat, it's G, says commission action on a preliminary plat. The commission shall review and recommend to the council to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove, or table an additional or table for additional information when acting on a preliminary plat. So the difference is, preliminary plat, it specifically says that the commission shall review and recommend to the council to approve. And where this one says approval of a subdivision plan, it says that it's reviewed and then approved by the mayor and the council. So I think, this, I'm gonna tell you, I sat up there, well, I didn't sit up there, but sit on the council, I was listening to what you guys have, but that's kind of the difference between,
preliminary
truthfully,
and
that's
final?
really the first time I really read the difference between the two. But when you look at between the final and the preliminary, those are the wording
Well, I think what the
specifically
difference
says,
is that
which
we're seeing, in this particular case, we saw a major change.
But they
There
have
was
the
a
right to
major
do
change
that.
to the preliminary.
And it said.
And that never came back to this body. It went straight to the
council action upon recommendation from, this is from a preliminary plat.
Okay.
Upon recommendation from a commission, from the commission, the council will then either reject the plat or approve it subject to conditions that may be set forth. These conditions may be expressed in a written letter to the developer. The developer after adding these conditions to the plat will then resubmit to the administrator for his review and approval of technical data and placement, etc. And then, so it doesn't say if the council makes any changes that it comes back to the commission again.
Read that first part again for me.
Upon recommendation from the commission,
Okay, pause there. What happens if it's a recommendation of denial?
It doesn't matter.
So
it just doesn't
a
matter?
recommendation
No,
from
'cause we
the
advise.
commission, the council can either reject it, so that if you denied it, they can reject that and say, nope, we're gonna pass, they can reject your recommendation, or they can approve it, subject to conditions
So if you take
that may be set forth, so.
But we're not taking it away from the
So-
preliminary, it's only on the final.
In other municipalities, such as Twin, a conditional use permit, that is something that is approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it stops there. It doesn't get forwarded on to the city council. If the applicant isn't happy with the decision, they can appeal the decision to the city council. In other municipalities, this body has more, you're not a recommending body, but you are a decision-making body for certain applications. What I would ask, regardless of your feelings of this, whether you're saying no or yes, is having a clarification to your role as far as with the final plat would be really appreciated. It would make my job easier because I don't want to interpret it on my own, something that vague.
That's all I was doing.
And if you believe that, yes, we should have a checks and balance, I would recommend you saying we want to add the same language from the preliminary plat as far as your role to the final plat, just for the sake of clarity. Because right now, it isn't that clear, and it's up to my interpretation, and if they don't like my interpretation, they can appeal it, and it creates sort of a mess. I would rather just avoid that sort of mess.
I can
and
totally
have it
go
be
that
clear.
way. I
So-
think having the same language on both would be absolutely beneficial. Which means that we take the language from the preliminary plat and our role as the commission and move it into F, and that would be the same role then.
Okay, so what you're saying is that on the final plat, that we
We
go through the
recommend-
same process as we did for the preliminary, basically.
Except with a more fine-tooth comb.
Well, if you're talking about putting the language in the preliminary plat, which is the commission reviews, makes a recommendation, all this, that's what you want to see in the final plat. So we go through the same process, basically.
You know what it also does? It's that right there. To me, that's a big thing. If you have an action item discussion, you have a public hearing. That public hearing is an extremely important piece of any decision being made within any municipality.
Okay, so what I see though, I mean, the way the setup is, and it's fine, I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, again, it puts this commission in the point of saying, if the council is doing the preliminary plat, and this is what they said and told the thing, and everybody's hunky-dory with it, it comes back to us. Now we're again saying, we didn't like the decision the council made.
No, that's not what's being said.
That's what I'm
What's
hearing.
being said is that the final, let's just say the preliminary comes here, and preliminary, we pass it with recommendation, or we deny it, whatever it might be. It goes to the council. Okay, the council already has the determination to overrule us anyway. So it doesn't. To be honest with you, there's times when I go, what's the point of our jobs anyway when it comes to certain things? But as you already mentioned, we are an approving body for certain
No,
things
we're
that come
not
through.
now.
Yeah, we are. We are an approving body for certain.
Right.
I said in other municipalities.
In other
you are.
municipalities,
In here,
we don't
this-
have
in this
any.
one, it's solely recommended.
No. I'm talking about for other things that we approve, like a conditional use permit.
No, we don't.
So that'll go to the council too.
Yeah. We're an advisory board, and in my mind, the way this is set up, the reason that you add a commission is because the city council cannot possibly, unless they're meeting every day, do all of the,
Exactly.
Perfect. Which is why we should have that same language within the final plat.
that's a big jump in my mind. I can't go that big jump.
So, for example, the council doesn't have to have a public hearing, correct? I mean, that's
Right.
So, like today, you just passed a preliminary plat. Nobody spoke at the public hearing. The council's not going to have a public hearing.
That's right.
Exactly.
And the problem is the council doesn't hear that argument that we heard.
So,
Well, they
no,
get it.
That's not entirely true. They don't hear it verbatim, but we do prepare the findings of fact, which does have all of those items. So it's, they do receive findings of fact. They do receive X amount of number of people came to speak about this. This was the majority of the overall concern. It's not like that they don't receive any evidence of these wonderful long public hearings that are 2 hours and then they get a free pass of not hearing anything.
So, from my understanding, when the city council said, okay, we're going to approve this as it's been resubmitted, did they address anything other than the density? Did the city council actually address anything other than we're doing this and we're cutting back the number of places? And did they address any of
Off the
that?
top of my head, I would suggest that you read the findings of fact for
I will.
that item.
I will, because I haven't, and I'll admit that.
Yeah.
So, James, if you're talking like, for example, that traffic is probably what you're talking about with that.
Different things. There were
So
several things.
The council felt that the level of service in the roads was an A, and it was dropping possibly to a B, which is still a level of service that is perfectly fine within a road. And so those are things that they took into consideration.
Okay.
I mean, I would hope they did. I mean, that was, but I can't speak for them, but I mean, I know level of service was part of it. It's a big deal, so.
So, kind of to get us back focused, the only issue I'm really hearing is all wording is fine until we get to the F where it says by the commission is crossed out, which now we have a suggestion of possibly adding the same language from the preliminary plat into this one, or continue with what's being recommended now.
Which you could argue is
Or keep it the same.
streamlining because it leaves the possibility of the administrator, whoever's sitting in my seat, interpreting in such a way that's controversial that their decision gets appealed and it goes to the body. When we can be black and white, I totally suggest being black and white. So
when you say black and white, are you...
just we need to know exactly what your role is in the final plat is. If you're taken out of it, great. If you're in it, let's make sure we define what you're doing so it's very clear and straightforward.
Which again goes back to just copy paste.
You can easily do that. Whether or not the additional hearing on it, Yeah, no, and where land use is crazy, and for those crazy moments, we always have our lawyer present, just because our insurance doesn't cover land use stuff, and when you're dealing with private property rights, especially after we approved a preliminary plat, things get weird. But that's one of the reasons that we'll have legal counsel sitting there during those final plat reviews to ensure that the interests of the city are protected, of the applicant, and also the general public in such a way that we stay out of trouble. Just because what I need you to understand is after the preliminary plat, that's really it. Like, you want to get everything you really want at the time of preliminary plat. Getting things at final plat is a lot more difficult. That's really fine-tuning items that we already approved.
And I guess that's exactly why I think that it's important that the people that are making the recommendation on the preliminary plat are the ones that are also making a recommendation. And I understand it's a recommendation. The city council at that point doesn't have to do anything with it. But the city council doesn't listen to that public hearing, and I think that's the argument that you're making. And that I'm not arguing our position as a recommending body. I'm just saying if you're trying to be transparent, then you're going the opposite direction as far as what I can see. And that's my opinion. It's not, but I just think that if the recommending body recommends on the preliminary plat as presented, and then it goes up for an appeal, then I think that it's just as much an obligation. I'm sorry, Nancy.
It's not an appeal, though. It's not an appeal. The council is not.
You can't appeal a recommendation. You can only appeal a decision.
Okay. All right.
And we can't make that decision. We just recommend what we think is the best.
Okay.
I mean, we could rewrite the whole, possibly rewrite the whole.
But Nancy, I'm going to be honest with you. With that mentality, then why do we even have anything on preliminary plat?
Because that's what you're saying to the council.
Why can't we do that with this?
Because now we've just gone in a huge circle. So now we're having to say to the council, okay, we recommend this. And they say, no, we've looked at this and they're the final word, basically. So then if they change it, what I see, if it's coming back here and we do recommendation or anything like that, we are saying the council, we don't approve of what you just did.
No, what we're saying is that we're looking at the changes that were made to see if they're in compliance with what our first recommendation was. Not that we're trying to supplant or suppress the city council.
So,
that's not what we're trying to do.
Mr. Chair, one thing that we can do, so the understanding of the role in that specific situation is completely understood, is we can do a work session with legal. Because yes, your recommendations, and this is great discussion, and I like it because it shows I have a commission that thinks, which is good. Is when the city council approves that final plat, or the preliminary plat, and you get the final plat, you can't judge your final plat to something that wasn't approved. You have to judge it to what was approved. So you can't go back and hold them to that. We will get sued so hard. But what we can do to help ensure, we want to feel things are happening, that we're being listened to, that considerations are made. This is why we're doing the housekeeping item, and we're going through the process to try to circumvent those scenarios when it appears that there is a huge deviation from city code, from the comprehensive plan. We don't like having findings of fact where the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council are the exact opposite. But I can tell you that we're not the first group that has disagreed with the governing body. Happens more often than I think we would like it to happen. But the reason that you are here is because, as Nancy mentioned, the City Council, they have so many different departments that they fall under. But you're supposed to be learned in the comprehensive plan. You're supposed to be learned in the land use ordinance. And I believe this body is because you quote it in meetings, which is the best, and it makes my job easier as far as the findings of fact. the best thing that we got out of this is I believe that this body understands the importance of clarity in the ordinance. You know, maybe it's not removing you from it, but we all can agree that we have to make that part more clear. Correct? So, and the other items that I had proposed for amendment, I don't think there was any issue with those.
No.
As far as clarification.
No, I
So-
think that's what I've noticed too.
So things are good, you know. Four out of 5 isn't bad.
I can think of one,
That's good.
example going the other way.
Yeah.
Southern Comfort subdivision. When I was up there, as this commission wanted to make it I think R2s and R3s, and that was what came your recommendation, and we said no way, and made it R1s. So, I mean, it's gone the other way too. So, I mean, totally changed. You know, you made a recommendation, we said no and sent it back. So,
I think there needs to be this, in any kind of healthy decision making, there should be a back and forth, in my opinion, because
well, I don't know if we sent it back. We'll
Well,
just change it to
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there needs to be this. Transparency is huge, in my opinion, and I think that I'm not okay with taking us out, but I am okay with redefining or better defining our role within the final plat. I think we actually do serve a very important piece in that final plat, whether it's checks and balances, whether it's an opportunity for a public hearing, whatever it might be, fine-tune comb, extra eyes. I think there's more positives of us being involved than there are not us being involved. That's just, again. So I don't know what you want to do. I mean, we can do a motion of, hey, let's approve everything except that piece right there, but
You can. You can certainly.
We can do anything.
Yeah, you're certain. You know what my recommendation would be, because I'm all about clarity. The code being clear is critical in order to have consistency. Would be you can say, all right, we like these 3, but that one we would like to be involved in the process, and we would like it to contain the same language as the preliminary plat, as far as the Planning and Zoning Commission's participation.
I'm lucky for you guys tonight.
What do you
It'll
want?
be your tiebreaker if it goes that direction. So, you want James? You want to make a motion? Nancy, you want to make a motion? What do you want to do?
You can make a motion, James.
I'm not sure what kind of motion I want to
Well,
make.
that's it, exactly.
So what I just heard was we can make a motion to
table the one.
approve D&E. That's because there's nothing in there that we're all like, I don't know.
And G.
So we can do D&E,
E,
and we can do G.
And G. It's only F.
But the only thing in F is just about the commission. Everything else is,
Well, I would say table F, because it's more, because aren't we looking at getting together and actually seeing what,
Where we are. I actually believe that's probably the best thing we could do, because
I
I
do
think
too.
we need to sit down with council and say, this is where we may see certain things, and as you pointed out, I think it's council
Clarification about-
who should be telling us what we're doing, because if council says, well, never mind, I don't discuss that too much. But the point is, I think it's a good thing for a work session or a time to be spent with council. And I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that what.
I'm making,
I'm
do
just
you
gonna
want me to
stop
make a
it.
motion?
Yeah, just make a motion to
Okay.
table it.
I'll just say that.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Okay, you go ahead if you'd like to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we table discussion item
F.
F until our next meeting.
okay. But
And
can,
approve the
Until
rest of
such
them.
time as we can have,
can we approve the others?
Yeah,
oh,
you can
yes.
approve the others. And table F.
So I make a motion that we approve D, E, and G and table F.
Yep. That sounds good. You
I can't make the motion.
You
have to
can't make it.
Nope.
can't vote either.
Also moved, Mr. Chairman, that we table only Now I've lost my thought.
Well, just simply.
Just, Nancy, would you just make
Yeah.
a motion? Thank you.
Okay. I make a motion
Oh,
that we recommend to approve D, E, and G of the, what amendments or whatever you're calling it,
Mine.
and table F based on further
Discussion.
discussion, clarification, however you want to do that.
Okay, I have a motion from Nancy, second from Philly. James?
Say aye.
Iron A.
aye.
Billy? Nancy?
Aye.
Dee Dee?
Aye.
So moved. And let's see, moving down, no new business, no old business, nothing there. Any questions about reports? Ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned at 7:24. 7:20, excuse me, 7:20. Okay, when are you two going back to the home?